I knew the next thing I wanted to do, I didn't want it to be physical labor. Like I've been a fighter, like Taekwondo. I've been a footballer. I've been a preacher. Like I want to do something that I can express without necessarily being there.
This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is powered by Z by HP, HP's high compute, workstation grade line of products and solutions. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Kurtis Pykes. Kurtis is a self-taught machine learning engineer from London, England, but he describes himself as a global citizen. He currently works as a freelancer for various companies and also maintains his own Medium blog. In the past year, he was voted to have some of the best Medium blog content in the area of machine learning by his peers on LinkedIn. In his spare time, he likes to read, exercise, and play chess, even though he could use a little work in the chess category. Kurtis has a fascinating story. We talk about how tragedy derailed his professional football career, otherwise known as soccer in the States, his scary experience as part of a cult, and how he found purpose and professional growth through the study of machine learning and writing. I love chatting with Kurtis, and I'm excited that I get to share our conversation with you all. Kurtis, thank you so much for coming on the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast today. I personally got familiar with you on LinkedIn with your incredible blogging. After I had our initial conversation, I was like, man, I have to have this guy on the show. You've got such an incredible story, and coming from a lot of adversity, kind of a very unique place, and ending up in machine learning and in this and becoming an influencer and a creator in this space. So again, thank you for coming in.
I just want to say thank you for having me. Before, like as I was starting my journey into the field, I was watching a lot of your videos on YouTube. So you've been a great help to me. So I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak on your podcast. And as part of that honor, I get to debut my first bold haircut with you. So
it looks great.
Thank you so much. I was a bit wary of it because it just kind of reminded me of my immortality, I guess. I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm actually getting old. Like, I never thought I would lose my hair, but here we are.
It happens,
but it's
man. Great. It was really like this year that I started to freak out about it a little bit, about getting older. My dad is in his 70s, and I see what he's like. He has a sciatica, he can't move around as well. And I'm getting to thinking like, I got to start taking care of myself better, or else, when I'm older, I still want to do stuff. I still want to be mobile.
Yeah.
And I'm finding the gray hairs. I started taking all these supplements. Great book for you. It's called Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. Highly recommend it. I read it a couple months ago. David Sinclair. So he runs all of the anti-aging research at Harvard. So it's pretty legit.
You'll get my hair back.
Maybe you never know, man.
To be fair, I'm kind of liking it. Like, I've got really good feedback. And people were just saying people were saying I was being a bit extreme because it was a little bit of receding. It wasn't like I lost my hair. I just cut it off because I was like, I don't feel comfortable going out with my hair just out because my hair is receding. So I was just like, I've got good feedback.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is this is a trial run. Like, you tried it, you still could grow it back if you didn't like it, but if you like it, you can just keep it going, right?
Yeah, so that's the positive on it.
Excellent. Well, so now that we've all gotten familiar with both of our a little bit fear of getting older, I'd love to introduce the audience to you more through how you first got interested in data. That's something I love to ask. Was it a kind of a switch flipped, a pivotal event, or was it something that happened over a cascade over a long period of time?
Yeah, I would say it was like a random thing, but I was looking for something else to do. And just to kind of correct you on the question, I never first got interested in data. I only got interested in data when I realized it was the important part of artificial intelligence, well, machine learning specifically. I initially got more interested with machine learning, AI, that sort of arena. when I was listening to a podcast. I was at work. I was working as a postman at the time, and I would listen to loads and loads of podcasts, loads of interviews, and just different things. And it was a Bill Gates interview, and a kid asked him, like, what would you do if you never made Microsoft? And he was talking about natural language processing and how he would, create something that can convert text to speech and speech to text and all of these cool things that we see now. But that was my first trigger. I was like, yeah, I really need to hear what this guy's talking about. And so I just started my research from there. And yeah, just haven't looked back.
That's incredible. I think if Bill Gates is if he's interested in something, it's probably worth at least exploring. He's something I love every year that he releases is his reading list. He usually gives about 5 books that he's really excited about, and I would say there's been at least, I've looked at that for I don't know how many years he's done it. I recall the last at least 3 or 4 years. And there's been a couple books on that where I'm like, wow, this has the potential to like change someone's worldview or change how you view the world. I think one that really sticks out is the book Sapiens. That talks sort of just about the history of man, or the history of humans. I should be more correct on that. But to me, that was wild to see more of where we came from and a lot of the like good things that come from our history, but a lot of the things in our lives that we're like not prepared for based on how we've evolved. Like we're not designed to sit in front of computers for 8 hours a day, like a lot of us do, because that's something until the last 20 years even we haven't done. And so like if we should have been walking around or doing whatever,
I feel like that's playing a massive role in me realizing my age.
Yeah, probably.
Honestly, I really do think it is, because I saw gray hair here and I was just like, is that bug that I couldn't debug is what's causing this? But yeah, so
all right, so I want go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just gonna say it definitely has some sort of thing to do with sitting down, age.
Yeah, it's got to stay moving, man. So in regards to that, your I guess your story does start with a lot of movement, right? You were playing football at a very high level, and this is not American football. This is European football. So soccer, as some of my and you come from a background and you have a story of breaking into this field like none I've ever heard before. And I'd really just like you to kind of go through and tell me about that experience. Let's start with like the football days and kind of move through your life progression.
Something I don't usually talk about is the taekwondo days. So before I was a footballer, I actually used to do taekwondo, but I got bored because I hadn't lost a fight for like 3 years. I used to like do loads and loads of competitions, and it was like, oh, I'm beating everyone up.
That's wild.
It was kind of just like, whatever. And then I went into secondary school. All my friends were playing football, so I got involved with football. Like everyone around me was doing it. It was just the thing to do.
And awesome. Well, so before you get into that, you should try Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been doing it for basically like 3 months now, and I'm completely obsessed. Like
is that the same as capoeira? Capoeira?
No, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's like grappling. So you're putting people in like headlocks and stuff. Capoeira is like the dancing and the stuff, which is also really cool. But it's an unbelievable mental challenge that I did some like striking martial arts a while ago, but it is so different from a competitive perspective. Like it's like playing chess where you're thinking about, okay, the weight's here, I have to grab here, I have to do this. For someone who, for anyone who likes solving problems, it is, as of right now, my best outlet for exercising like my brain at the same time as my body. I've never experienced anything like that before.
I've never ever heard anyone refer to a combat sport as a problem solving. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, you got to look into it, man. It is wild. It's a lot of fun. Although I get absolutely beat up every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I have to go sit in an ice bath. and just like have all these bruises, but it's worth it.
See, so yeah, I was playing football. Gosh, where did I go? What happened with football? It was good. Oh boy, just a lot of complications happened whilst I was playing. Mainly to do with like me having poor representation or no representation at significant times. Like, I remember when I was 17, I was offered my professional contract, and the agreement was once I signed a contract. No, I can only sign the contract once I've got a team that will take me on loan. A loan is like just borrowing a player to another team. I don't know if you guys have that in like American sports, but well, yeah, you're just borrowing a player to another team, and then they can use you and give you back at the end of the year. So the only time that I could sign my contract was when I've got a team that will take me on loan. But the team that they initially wanted me to go on loan to, I wasn't happy with it because when I was a younger player, so we called it a scholar. When I was a scholar, I was on loan to a team that was higher than the team that they wanted to send me on loan to when I was a professional. So I was just back and forth. I'm not interested. I don't want to play for a team that's lower than the team that I've been at already. At worst case scenario, send me back to the team that I was just at because they was happy with me. It didn't go well. They ended up just saying, go find your own team then, if that's what you want. And I said, okay. But it wasn't a good idea. Like, it was very close to the beginning of the season and most teams had given out their budgets already. So for me to just walk up to a team with no experience and say to them, hey, so basically I need a team that's going to pay my wages and let me play for them because I'm a pro at this team. But obviously I don't, they would only let me sign my pro when I can get a team that will do that. Didn't really make sense. But this is where I guess this whole getting experience without experience notion came to my brain, like from the get-go, because it was like I needed a way to prove to adults that I am good enough to play with adults, even though I'm a boy. So I just said, you know what? Forget this whole professional stuff. I'm going to go into the non-leagues. I dropped to a league lower than the team that they tried to send me on loan to in the first place. And boy, it was hell, man. I was just going back and forth with loads of different managers. In those levels, is more about like your access to the like top people in the league. Like, do you know the manager? Do you know this person? Do you know this person? And you know, I'm walking into teams as a stranger and just getting bashed around. It doesn't matter how good I was. If the manager's son plays in that position, you're not playing. If his friend plays there, you're not playing. And then one day I just got lucky. I found a team that really appreciated me and I appreciated them. I stayed there for a while, but I set myself a goal that I wanted to reach the second tier of English football by the end of the next year that was coming. And I fell short of it by one tier. Many people cussed me about this as well. There's like, Kurtis, it was only one tier. You could have worked your way up. But, you know, I set myself the goal. I missed it. And I was just like, all right, it's time to move on. Well, also, at that point in time, I also had different influences around me now. So it wasn't football friends. I had friends that were interested in finance. I had friends that were interested in, sorry about that. No, I had friends that were interested in finance. I had friends that were interested in like loads of other stuff that I wasn't familiar with. Well, I wouldn't be familiar because I didn't go to school like properly. And so I just started getting interested, and then, yeah, that was the end of it. I was just like, I don't want to play football anymore. So I stopped.
That's crazy. And so what was there more into that decision to stop? You know, like a lot of the times our personal lives and things like that, they overlap with our professional lives, and for better or for worse, that can drive decision making.
Right. So something I did brush over was at that time my closest friend had been murdered. He was stabbed like 7 times, and the worst thing about it is that like when he was dying, he's called me and we're on the phone having a conversation about him telling me about how he's going. And you know, it kind of stuck with me because, you know, when I was in, it's going to be hard for me to break it down. So he was in London and I was in a place called Essex, which was about an hour and a half away from where he was. And for me to get to him, I had to go underground, which means I had to lock off the phone and I wasn't able to communicate with anyone for an hour and a half. So I was just in my thoughts, like thinking about everything, like, no, he's going to survive. And when he survives, we're going to do all of these things, good things, and, you know, make stuff better and all of that stuff. But, you know, he didn't make it. And that kind of sent me in different directions as well. Because as much as I was serious about football, I still wanted to do something good, but it was like all I knew was what was around me. And what was around me wasn't necessarily the best. So I started doing things that were getting me in trouble and getting me in problems with people in the local neighborhood. And it was just like, imagine being a professional footballer or like someone who's meant to be a professional, but you can't go outside. Well, you can go outside, but you can't go out comfortably knowing that no one's going to try and attack you because you live in a certain area or something like that. It kind of got to that phase. Like I started hanging around with guys from my area more, and I didn't like guys from a certain area because it was just ridiculous. It was silly. And but it was distracting enough for me to, you know, not fully set my sights on my actual goal. But from that, it was like deep within my heart, I always knew I don't want to be a bad person. I want to do good. Like I really, really want to do good. So bit by bit, I started changing. And then it came to a point where I was just reflecting. I was like, how has it got this far? You know, I used to be a professional footballer. Now I'm playing non-league football. I'm like 7 or 8 tiers down. What the hell? I need to get serious. Initially, my first thought was I'm going to focus on football. And that's exactly what I done. But it was like, I used church as well. So I decided for me to focus on football, I need to distance myself from my friends in that area. And I need to become, you know, more pure, like in a religious sense. So I started going to church, got baptized and all of these things. But then new problems, new environment, new problems. The new church was such a great church, lovely people. The only issue was they were very against everything I was trying to do outside of the church, such as like building community. We was trying to put on events for like people in the neighborhood to come together and just do something positive together, like play football, and the winner will win a prize or something like that. The church I was initially at that baptized me wasn't for it. But my friend who passed away, his older brother went to another church and I've told him about our problem. And he was like, oh, I'll introduce you to my pastor. He introduced us to his pastor and his pastor was like, oh, is that the event that you want to put on? Don't worry, I'll pay for everything. And he gave us the cash prize and everything. But the circumstance was that we joined his church, which I did. I was like, you agree with everything we believe in, and you're actively trying to help us, like, you know, get it over the line. And we've joined this church now, and over time I've grown in the ranks, and basically it was a cult. Long story short, it was a cult. But as I'm there, of course, when you're in a cult, you're not awake to yourself being in a cult. You're not like, oh my God, I go to a cult. But I was just serving and doing the things that I've been told to do by the leadership. And through that, I was being rewarded with like more trust and, you know, more responsibility, which made me more of a higher ranking member in the cult. And to the point where I got trusted with my own church. So I was preaching when I was from 19 to 22 to about a small church of like 70, 80 people. And I mean, in perspective is like to the bigger church, it was quite small. But I mean, yeah, maybe to some of the conferences we hold now in like machine learning talks, it's still is a decent crowd, you know. But yeah, I got involved in the cult, man. And I was just like, you know what? Forget football. And these cult guys were also into the finance. Like I said, my new friends at that time were the people that were into finance and things that I never really thought about, because, you know, I hadn't been around people that went to school. I've only been around guys that knew football. Like, it was just football, football, football. And most people that do that, they don't necessarily get the full education. So it was a different sort of environment, and I liked it. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think that there, even though there are some pretty you know, bad circumstances around all those things, there's always time to reflect about positive things that came out of them. You know, I think I've told this story a couple times, and it's not on the same scale as your best friend, you know, being taken away from you like that. But in a somewhat similar sense, I lost my cousin when I was 21, who was also the closest person to me in the world. It wasn't as in violent circumstances, but you know, he had a heart attack at the age of 21, which no one could ever see. It happened very suddenly. And very much like you, I had a completely different lease on life. I legitimately overnight changed who I was as a person. Like, you know, the day before I was procrastinating, I was putting stuff off, I was probably partying a little too much, I was doing XYZ. And after something like that happens, you realize that, like, I mean, there's two ways to approach that, right? You either go down a dark rabbit hole because you think, oh, I could die tomorrow, I should do all these hedonistic things, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna do drugs, I'm gonna do whatever just because that feels good now, and I don't know if I'm gonna make it further. Or you go this other direction where it's like, wow, you know, time is precious here, and I want to do something that's meaningful. And I realized that the life that I was living till that point was not meaningful. Like, what value was I creating in the world? You know, I was Absolutely. Just coasting along and doing whatever.
Do you know, like,
go ahead.
No, literally, like, when you're saying it is like giving me flashbacks, like with a friend, a conversation I had with a friend, like when he was just like, the most pleasant way to say it is that my friend who passed away, he laid his life down for us to have a better life, because that's literally what happened. Like, and it's when you're describing it, it's just reminding me, like, it seems like your cousin, who you was quite close to, when he passed away, it was kind of like, wow, like, fix up sort of thing. It's time to do things that I said I'm gonna do and things like that.
So, yeah, dude, I'm getting goosebumps whenever I talk about this topic. It gets me, like, it hits me really hard, because you think about it, you're like, okay, this other person, the life they could have lived, right? Like, the good they could have done in the world. Like, I almost feel like it's my responsibility to try and at least have some of that good that the other person could have done in the world, because, like, they aren't around to do that. Like I have to have those experiences for them. I have to share that value that they would have brought, because, like, you know, the world is missing them. I want to make up for that in some way.
Honestly, you're just speaking my thoughts. Honestly, literally right now, you're speaking my thoughts. Like, it feels like your burden. I have to make right all the things that he didn't have a chance to do. You know, and honestly, I definitely feel it. Yeah. Definitely feel it.
You know, there's something beautiful about how purpose can integrate with those things. I mean, I know that I've really looked to create deeper and better relationships with people after that, because, I mean, you never want to have a situation where something like that happens and you're like, wow, you know, what could a, you know, like, before this person went away, how could I make sure I got to know them well and understand who they are and share their message further. I'm just, you know, I'm grateful I got to know, you know, my family member. I'm grateful that you got to know your friend well enough that you're able to understand what they're about and hopefully pass that forward.
Well, it's hard. It's hard. I don't want to go too much, like just rapping on about this stuff, but it's like, I think in hindsight now, like, that relationship has taught me a lot about myself. And you see, as much as I may like write a lot and share a lot of things on social media, I'm very, very introverted, and I I really do like, I mean, I have loads of friends. I get on with loads and loads of people, but there's usually only one person that I have like, who's like, can I say my confider? Someone that I like really keep close. And that person is always super, super good with people. Like he's like, if I was to describe him, it's almost like, yeah, you would see us together and think we're always like, we're the same and all of that. But him, the life of the party, everyone is happy when he comes, and they'll only get happy and when they realize I'm with him. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but it's like, it's just shown me about myself a bit more, and it's allowed me to appreciate who I am and understand that like I don't need to be like everybody else, because I can find the rest of me, or like, can I say the rest of me? Or I can express myself more with other people around me, if I'm describing it right. Just like it's helped me to appreciate other people's more and their impact and influence in your life. There's certain things that I know I really can't do, and having someone there, like a friend, a good friend, can get all of that out for you. Gosh, I hope I haven't confused everybody in saying
no. I get exactly what you're saying. Is that so something I haven't necessarily talked that much about on this podcast, which is kind of weird, is that I absolutely love this podcast because every week, probably more than once a week, I get to sit down and I have an in-depth conversation with someone where I get to learn about their life. I get to learn about the things that incentivize them, the things that they find meaningful, and it's completely uninterrupted, right? I get to have this very rich and meaningful conversation with this other person. And honestly, before this, the only people that I'd have meaningful conversations like that with are my best friends, right? Or like someone that is so close to me that but at the same time, you really only get to have well, I tell you, you really learn a tremendous about yourself and about how you think when you're comparing it to how someone else thinks, right? Like we're sharing our experiences, we're feeling these things, and we're articulating them. But it isn't until I see how you respond to a situation that I think about how I would respond to that same situation, and what would go through my head, and what would what experiences that would drum up, or what that would lead to. And I think that that's a really like a beautiful thing, is that through other people we can learn about ourselves, because when we're just thinking in our mind, right, we're limited to our thoughts, right? We're limited to our experiences and the things that we know. When we talk to someone else, we are now in a sense forced to share their experiences and like think about all the things that they're going through and how we would approach those things. It expands our world and makes it so that we have more of like a map, right? It's kind of like if you're playing a what is it, like a real-time strategy game, right? Where if you're you have this map and you see part of it, and then if you ally with someone, you can now see their part of the map. To me, it just makes the world bigger, and your collective consciousness is additive. It's an incredible, beautiful thing.
It's actually a very, you literally said it word for word. It's an African proverb. It's called Ubuntu, like the system.
Like the system, yeah.
It means through you I exist. And Nelson Mandela used to say it a lot, just to try and share selflessness amongst the South African people, where basically I exist through you. That's it. That was the meaning. And is really powerful, really, really powerful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've both seen the power of this through the communities that we've built, through sharing our work, through all these things. I think that that's a natural extension, right? Where we can talk about our experiences and people can learn. We can read about other people's experiences, and it might be a little bit more watered down. Like I highly recommend to everyone that I know now, you don't have to start a podcast, but like take an hour a week and just have a legitimate talk with someone who you like don't know as well as you could, and like try to learn everything about their life. Like ask them good questions, ask them like like what drives them, like was there an experience in this person's life that changed them or shaped who they are today, or like, you know, do they have what is the happiest that they've been? What event made their life as meaningful? You know, things like that. There's a whole lot of questions people can look up online, but like,
we're all super biased. We're super biased because I would say everyone should take time to just write a few things.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the same thing. I do that every single day. I write down a whole mess of stuff. Right. And I think that those are, in my mind, those are two complementary skills, right? Where if you're having those conversations, you're expanding your world, right? But when you write, you're refining how you think about it. So right. I'm able to like grow and see what else is out there. And then when I write and I like condense it to see how I personally really feel about it. I think those in tandem are like life-changing experience.
I never thought of it like that at all. Wow. Never really thought of that. Wow. That's pretty cool.
All right. That was an awesome tangent. I would really like to hear how you ended up getting out of this cult.
Jeez, yeah, how I ended up getting out. Okay, so I recently read a book about cults, literally the last book I read. And to be fair, I would even recommend people who haven't been in cults to read it, because I think the information needs to be spread around more, because, you know, in the current times we are, a lot more people are like, they're lonely. We'll put it like that, you know, because where everything is digitalized, we don't necessarily have to meet people anymore. So it goes in deep about attachment theory and how cults attract people and all of these things.
And what's the book called?
My God, I didn't even say it. It's called Love, Terror, and Brainwashing.
Okay.
By Alexander Stein. By Alexander Stein. It was a great book. When I left the cult I was in, she sent it over to me, and then honestly, I'm so upset I didn't read it earlier. But from reading it, I realized the reason I was able to get out, like the actual reason, is because I made a friend outside of the church. Like, it sounds so crazy. I don't want to go too much into attachment theory because I'm not well versed in it, but it's basically, you've got a leader who's been brought up with a disorganized attachment bond to some sort of someone they look up to, right? And their disorganization makes them want to create disorganized attachment bonds with other people so that they feel significant. It's just to fulfill their needs. And basically, I've gone from a disorganized attachment to this leader, and I've come out and created a secure attachment with another person who's not trying to use me for anything. He's just looking out for my good. And all this person was doing every day, oh, by the way, he was a colleague of mine, so we had a job together. All he was doing every day was showing me things, new things that I didn't know, which was crazy, because I've got this disorganized leader who's telling me definite truth. So he's telling me this is what it is, and this is the only way it is. And then I've got this other person who's showing me, like physically showing me, hey, this is what's out there. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like, I'm really living in a bubble to think that this is the answer to that, and that's the only answer. There has to be more outside. So as I started to hear more about what this guy who created this secure attachment to me was saying, I just wanted to explore more. Like, literally, that was it. But and part of my exploring was I used to read like a madman. I was probably reading before I met him, hence why I got a job. Because one thing that I got fed up with being dependent on, like, the church. Well, not the church, but I hated being dependent. I don't like having to ask for authority, like ask for permission to do certain things. And especially when it's to be fair, I don't like asking for permission anyway. I'm very much a rule breaker. That's the honest truth. I don't like asking for permission, full stop. And the minute I feel caged in a situation, I'm like, and I think I just got to that point where I couldn't be caged anymore. And so I went and got a job. which was totally against what the church were promoting, especially for someone that was in my position. So like I had been reading a lot, which was opening my mind to things, because I was just like, I don't want to be dependent. I don't want to be dependent. Recently, I shared a picture of the books I was reading. I wrote an article, How to Become a Serial Reader Whilst You're Working Full Time. And I shared some of the books that I was reading during that time period. And I didn't realize how many of them books were about psychology and thinking. The reason why I'm pointing that out now is because when I said I was dependent on the church, I wasn't only dependent on them for resources. I was dependent on them for my thoughts. Part of being a cult member is giving up your authority to make decisions. So I hadn't thought, like, I hadn't sat down and tried to think for a very, very long time, because the cult, part of their indoctrination is telling you the answers to everything. So whenever you have a question, you go back to this cult leader who's going to give you a definitive answer. That's it. So what's the point of thinking? So a lot of my books were about restarting my thought process, like how to make decisions by myself. How can I think? It sounds so stupid, I know. But
you love this book called Think Again by Adam Grant. It's literally about how we question decision. You 100% read it. It's right up your alley.
Think Again by Adam Grant.
Yep.
Think Again by Adam Grant. Well, literally, I actually went down Edward de Bono's books. Do you know Edward de Bono?
I probably know the books. I'm awful with remembering author names.
Right. He talks about like loads of different caps, red cap, green cap, different caps in the meeting room.
Yep.
Oh, yep. What? Oh, maybe you do. But yeah, I just. Oh, okay, right. My whole theory was just, if I can learn how to think, I will no longer be dependent on them. And it got me a job. When I got a job, I was just like, okay, now I need to stop being dependent on them for resources, because you know, I wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything, I was just at church. And so a lot of my resources was funded by the church, or well, by members from the church. And I was just like, yeah, I can't do this. And yeah, like one day I was sitting in the office, and then I was just like, I can't go back. I just can't go back. And that was it. Like I honestly can't put my finger on a moment and tell you this is why I left. But from reading that book and learning a bit about attachment theory and how secure attachments and unsecure attachments and disorganized attachments work, and that really enlightened me.
This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is brought to you by Z by HP. HP's high compute, workstation grade line of products and solutions. Z is specifically made for high performance data science solutions, and I personally use the ZBook Studio and the Z4 workstation. I really love that the Z line can come standard with Linux, and they also can be configured with the data science software stack. With the software stack, you can get right into the work of doing data science on day one without the overhead of having to completely reconfigure your new machine. Now back to our show. Yeah, I think that there is something just so powerful in that, and it's like a broader life lesson, even outside of just the cult aspect, is that like there's different levels of comfort in the world, right? And especially related to this data science domain. Like I personally am very similar to you in the sense that I question everything. Like I love autonomy. I think that I'm constantly wrestling in questions. I'm asking if I'm wrong, if I'm asking if the data is wrong. I'm very curious about these things. And I realize that there are no definitive answers out there generally, right? If the universe is infinite, there's infinite possibilities for everything. Exactly. And I think that mindset does lend itself very well to data science, right? Like in data science, there's very few yes or no answers. It's usually in probability distributions. It's in this, it's in that. And I also don't think, I think probably going so far as having everything answered by the cult is wrong, but I don't see anything wrong with like, hey, I want more structure. I want more stability. Maybe in like a lot of 9-to-5 jobs, they offer this, right? they offer that, hey, you do this at this period of time, you do, and you don't have to think about it as much, right? Like you have these set expectations, and some people really enjoy living that way, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay for them too.
If that's
But
what you like, yeah.
exactly. And I think that there is very much something about like who you are, or your curiosity level, or your appetite for risk, that might make data science a really good fit, that might make entrepreneurship a really good fit, that might make some of these other things a really good fit. And if you're on the other side of that spectrum, you probably don't want to go all the way down the cult route, but there are ways to set up your life where there is more structure, where there are these things.
I highly recommend you don't go down the cult life. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
In terms of time and finances, don't do it. Don't do it. You really don't want to.
A public service announcement.
You know what though? As much as I say that though, I'm quite grateful for that experience, you know? It sounds crazy. Like, I know I said a defining moment was my friend's passing, but that was also a defining moment in my life, because not only did it open up my eyes to like possibilities, because at one point all I knew was football, and then now I've write code, like to me it's like bloody hell, you know what I'm saying? Like I've seen a whole new world because of like not only my time there, but also leaving, like learning to become independent and then interdependent, and the difference between the two and all of these things. So it is, as much as it's got so much negatives, there were so many lessons in there for me that I feel like now has not only made me who I am, but has also made me a better person than I was before going in. So there's heavy cons, and I also want to say that I'm probably one of the more lucky ones, because I've got out, and fortunately for me, I've had a post-traumatic growth rather than post-traumatic stress disorder. And many people don't have that. I know people that have left and are still like almost vegetables, like in the kindest of ways, like mentally vegetables, because they're so traumatized by everything that happened to them. So
well,
I'm fortunate in that respect.
I think it's unbelievably difficult, but it is possible to find like some positives in even the worst situations. One of my favorite books is Man's Search for Meaning by, I think it's Viktor Frankl. I could be wrong.
That's on my list. Yeah.
I mean, so this guy is in probably some of the worst human conditions on the planet. You know, he was in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, and he was able to find like meaning and growth during this unbelievably difficult period when, you know, every day his friends, the people around him are dying, like you know, completely inhumane scenarios. And you know, it's not that he should be grateful for that experience, but it is a fact, one, that this happened and he had to live through it. And you know, like, he was able to find this beautiful insight, or write this incredible book that can help millions and millions of people because of that experience. And it's like, hey, you know, again, not saying that was a good thing that happened. It absolutely was not. But there is something hidden in all of these experiences that is valuable. You know, you go through some hardship in your life and you say, hey, I was able to get through this. That means that I am able to conquer hardship. I am resilient. I've built this mental strength to be able to get through this. If I got through this, I can get through anything else. You know, that to me is this very powerful thing that that if you've set your mind up to deal with adversity like that, nothing can stop you. If you take adversity in the other direction, where it's like, oh, life is just beating me up, I'm going to give up, that's something that, you know, that a flip of a switch can change that.
No, absolutely. And to be fair, to add to it, I think I've always kind of, maybe this is probably how I even got to thinking like how I did, is I've always thought of myself as a lucky person. Like, maybe not with the hair, but in general, in general, I've always thought of myself as someone who's quite lucky because, like, I mean, okay, let's break it down to the bare bone. I live in a neighborhood where is mainly single parents, but I've got both of my parents in my life and living together. I've grown up with both of them. Like, loads of different things that is almost like, damn, like I got this and they didn't. When I was 17, I started driving straight up. Like, all these little things that have, like, happened to me, I've kind of taken on, and I'm aware of it and realized not only am I fortunate, like am I lucky, like I feel like I've got someone in my corner that's always just, as much as I'm going through something bad, is just like I'm being looked after. So that helps with the, like, thinking, oh yeah, I'm going through something positive. As much as something is bad, I can still spot something negative in the whole, like, oh my God, did I just say as long as something is bad, I can still spot something positive. Within it. So finally we got there in the end, man. God.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I have felt something similar. It's not the same thing.
Wow.
I wouldn't say that it's that I believe that I'm lucky, but I've always had this unwavering belief that things are going to work out well in the long term. Right. And I don't know what drives that. Like, I've had it ever since I was a kid. I was like, hey, it's not necessarily that everything that I do is going to work out. But over the course of my life, for some reason, I believe that, like, for the most part, I'm gonna reach my dreams, and for the most part, I'm gonna have success in the things that I do. And the nice thing is that as I've gotten older, yeah, there's things that I failed at, but there's also things that I've been successful at, and those keep adding and feeding that idea. And that doesn't mean that I don't have to work hard to get those things, but I just have this, like, this switch in my head that says, hey, Ken, if you do what you're supposed to do, if you, like, think of other people, if you work hard, if you do XYZ, like, it's all going to work out. Like, you're going to have stumbles, but the stumbles are going to be smaller than the mountains that you're going to build and create.
I wonder what causes that, because literally, like, for as long as I can remember, it's always been there. Like, I just like you, I can't remember, like, it just hitting me. It's always been there. Like, so I really wonder what causes that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that preceded all of the really advanced reading I did on, like, personal psychology and a lot of those types of things. I mean, I would imagine for me, at least some of that is related to my parents, and I'm really grateful for them. I remember distinctly, maybe it was a little arrogant of my dad to say this, but I was getting bad grades in school or something like that, and I was an awful student growing up. But my dad just told me, he's like, look, like, you come from me and your mother, we're both, like, very smart people, like, you're gonna do good. Like, there's no reason you should be failing this. You have all of the capability genetically or whatever it is, like you could do this. Like, it's not predefined, but, like, what's holding you back here? The only thing that's holding you back is your belief system. And yeah, again, a powerful thing. So talking of getting over adversity, after playing professional football, after getting out of this cult, learning coding must have been easy, right?
God. Do you know what? I can't remember it being hard, because it was more of a distraction than like I want to learn. Because I started to learn how to code whilst I was still in a cult. And the reason I started to learn how to code is because I knew the next thing I wanted to do, I didn't want it to be physical labor. Like, I've been a fighter, like Taekwondo. I've been a footballer. I've been a preacher. Like, I want to do something that I can express without necessarily being there forever. Like, and I wasn't fully present when I was at the cult, like, services and all of these things. Like, so whenever I was, there, I was thinking about programming and what I can do as a programmer. So I guess I kind of like, I don't know, like, don't get me wrong. There was things that were difficult for me to grasp. Like, that's standard. But it wasn't like, oh my God, this is hard. I'm never going to be a programmer. I always knew I was going to get it. Like, I'll be able to do it, sort of thing. Yeah. Maybe that stems from what we just spoke about earlier, like just having that feeling within us that, you know, whatever happens is going to work out. Maybe, I don't know, but
yeah,
coding for me was a distraction from everything.
When you frame it that way, there's like almost a necessity, right? It's like, I have to do this. It's not like, oh, like I could do that. I mean, my version of the story is so much less exciting than your version, but when I first started learning coding, I was a management consultant, and I just hated the work. It wasn't for me. I worked long hours. I was talking and consulting people on things that I didn't know anything about, and I would go into work and like I would just go on Code Academy, and during the course of the day I'd learn how to code because it was something that opened a door to something else, right? Yeah, it was something that like, hey, if I learn this skill, this creates opportunities for me outside of this work that I don't want to do or that I don't enjoy. And like, when you frame it like that, there is no like, oh, this is difficult, this is hard. It is like, hey, this skill set leads to an opportunity. It's a way. Yeah, exactly. And that's such a, you know, I must imagine that during your time period, the motivation was higher, and you probably even got that feeling on steroids. But like,
the thing is, there was at no point was I thinking coding is going to take me out of the cult, because I never ever thought I was going to leave. I just thought coding is going to change my situation. So exactly like what you're saying, like, yeah, I definitely burnt the boat. There was no other option. I was going to learn it. Like, I had to. So it couldn't have been hard, but I struggled with concepts. Certain concepts were tough for me to grasp. Like, and to now, like, till date, there's certain things where I'm just like, God, what the hell is, you know, when, oh gosh, I even forgot what it's called. When you put the @ symbol ahead of a function, God, in the Python.
Oh yeah. I very rarely use that.
No, it's not. Gosh, we're embarrassing ourselves. We're meant to be experts. Okay,
I have
let's
no
ignore that. But that @ thing, like little things like that, I'm just like, okay, I'm still a bit confused with how to use this, but you know, it is everything has just kind of been like, it's necessary. I have to learn this, so I'm gonna do it. And so it wasn't, I never really thought about the difficulty at all.
I love that. And you know, I think that there's something to learn about that mindset, is if the way that we generate motivation is we convince ourselves of things. And if you can frame a scenario not like, oh, this is impossible to learn, or this is going to be really hard if I do it. And if you take the difficulty out of it and you say, hey, this is something I want to do, this is something I'm going to do, like, and because it's going to create these things for my life, that makes you a lot more likely to do it. I mean, like, coding is a skill that takes time, right? Like I don't think it is like harder than other disciplines or easier than other disciplines. It is just something that in my mind is a function of time and effort. And it might be a little faster for some people, it might be a little slower for some people, but that doesn't necessarily make it, again, harder or easier. And I think if we just frame it in terms of reality, right? Like hard and easy are human constructs. Time, I guess, is also a human construct, but it's a more scientific one. And if we're framing it in terms of time, that's something different, right? If you say, hey, learning the basics of Python is going to take me XYZ hours, probably, that's a lot more practical in my mind than saying it's going to be hard to learn Python, the basics of Python.
Literally. Dude, have you watched The Matrix?
Yeah.
Oh man, when you were saying that, it was just giving me Matrix blues. I love The Matrix. My favorite film, man.
Yeah, I just want to age like Keanu Reeves. That's the goal, man. He's like almost
he's grown
60
younger.
and he looks great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's grown younger.
Give me what he's taken. Right? Like, geez.
Nah, he looks good, man.
So I want to make sure we touch on how you broke into the machine learning space. What was that experience like? I think that, you know, coming from a background where you don't have the formal education, you have this very rich and diverse life experience. What was it like to start learning, and how did you pick that up?
Right. So when I fully acknowledged that I'm gonna go in as a machine learning engineer, I started following Andrew Ng, and just taking on board what he was saying and trying my best to fill out everything that he was saying. And I was very particular about that because there's so many people saying a lot of things in machine learning, and if you listen to everybody, you will go mental. So I was just like, okay, most reliable person, who am I going to listen to? Boom, boom, boom. Followed him, and I knew I don't have credentials to get in. So like, I knew whatever I had to do if I was going to get a job was going to be unique. I'm not comfortable cold calling and cold messaging people. And at the time, the world was open, so we can go to meetups. So I just used to go to so many meetups. Like, I'll literally, whatever the meetup, as long as it's to do with machine learning, I'm there. And I even got introduced to meetup by the guy who I said I had a secure attachment to. Crazy. But yeah, I started going to meetups, and I guess one time I was just, I went to a meetup and I've sat down and some big guy, like some proper tall guy with a massive beard has come and sat next to me. And we were working, was doing the stuff, was doing whatever it is we had to do. And then he got stuck with some stuff on GitHub. So instead of me taking his laptop and doing it for him, I was like, follow along on mine. And so I've gone to my GitHub and he's seen my repo was quite full with loads and different commits and stuff. He was like, oh, so you code already? I was like, yeah, I've been, learning in machine learning and data science and all of this stuff. And working on a few projects here and there. And he's like, oh, really? Can I see? And I was like, yeah, sure. So, I gave him a little glimpse because, we still had the work we had to do. And he was just like, dude, I would love to see this after. Can we stay after and do all this? And I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I helped him out. After I finished helping him and we finished the class and all of that thing, I've quickly ran him through the program. He's told me a bit about himself and he took my number and he said he's going to contact me. I didn't hear from him for about a month or two. And then just out of the blue, he's like, hey, Kurtis, what are you doing next week? I was like, yeah, not much. I'm just same old, working. And then he was like, come into the office and can you present your project that you showed me? I was like, yeah, cool. Dude, I get there. And the guy was like, oh, by the way, you're going to be presenting to one of the CEOs and the CTO. And I was like, what? What the hell? I ain't spoken to a CEO in my life. Bloody hell. Fortunately, the CEO pulled out. He had a meeting, an emergency meeting he had to go to. But I'm still sitting there with the chief technology officer, and I'm just like, dude, this guy's gonna see every mistake in my code. So anyways, I've done the presentation, he loved it. And then at the end of the conversation, he was just like, so how much are you looking for? And I've kind of got, what do you mean? I don't know if he was trying to offer me on the spot, like if he was trying to charge me for something on the spot, or he wanted to give me a job. And then when I got out the meeting, it kind of clicked. Oh my days, this guy was trying to employ me. Crap. And so I've messaged the guy and I was like, dude, I didn't know what he was talking about. Because when he asked me how much am I looking for, I was just like, oh no, don't worry about it, man. We don't need to talk about that. Money doesn't really matter. It's all right. We could just, whatever. And so he's kind of looked at me funny. And then now I've realized, yeah, it's because he's put a blank check per se in front of me. And I've just said, yeah, don't worry about it. But eventually I did, sit with the CEO and we had a discussion and we spoke about things. That was my first time in tech. Again, that's just me getting lucky. But without trying to sound bitter or bad about it, it probably was just another one of those experiences that probably wasn't the best thing, but I've learned from it because I was the first hire at the company, and I was the first hire as a machine learning engineer intern at the company. Hopefully you're seeing all of the red flags now. You never want to be the first hire as an intern. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, there should be some sort of senior staff ahead of you. And, you know, because I'm new to tech and all of that stuff, I didn't quite realize that I was, you know, wasting time because I wasn't doing the tasks that I set out to initially do in the beginning. It was probably a job I should have left a lot earlier than I did because I ended up feeling really, really bad. You know, they were giving me tasks and I was just like, I can't do this. But I didn't realize I couldn't do it because I just didn't have the seniority and not like the experience required at least to do it. So I'm trying to do things. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't. So I just ended up doubting my whole career. And then fortunately for me, I had one of the best managers ever. Like, this guy would sit down with me weekly and talk to me about stuff. And he got me into blogging. He was just like, Kurtis, you should start writing about what you're learning and things like that. I started it and it went really well. And during the lockdown, I was furloughed because, you know, my function wasn't generating any income for the company. Super reasonable. And it wasn't building any value, and it didn't look like it was about to, which is probably what even contributed more to me feeling like I'm just rubbish, man. Like, you know, and I was furloughed. But during that period, I was just like, I'm probably going to lose my job. Let me just focus on writing. And so I started writing like a madman, like writing as much as I can. And then it ended up paying off for me. Like, you know, I did get made redundant in the end, but 3 days after being made redundant, I was offered a freelance contract. Like, I didn't go searching for it. They came to me in my LinkedIn DMs. I was just like, hey, this is a new life. But yeah, it probably wasn't the greatest of ideas. And the reason why I was like very, very deliberate to mention it is because I've actually spoken to a few people that are going through similar things, whereas like teams are trying to build out data teams, but the people that are in charge may not have the greatest grasp about becoming more data literate or data science and things like this. And you've got people trapped in jobs because of responsibilities rather than their actual desire to stay there. And it was a tough time, very, very tough time. I was fortunate to have a really, really, really good manager who was just giving me pointers and tips and all of these things. And it was great. Now I've been freelancing for quite a while, but I said to myself, I probably am going to get another job. Reason being is because freelancing only takes like about 20 hours of my week. And it's like, what am I doing after that? Like, I don't have anything else to do. I don't have a family. I don't have kids. I might as well just work. So, but yeah, that was key.
No, I love it. And so I'd love to hear more about like the freelancing landscape and how you were able to develop that. Is that essentially all from your blogging and LinkedIn?
Yeah. So big accident, like the biggest accident ever. Like, I just started sharing stuff on LinkedIn. Everything that I was writing, I started sharing it on LinkedIn. And gosh, you should have seen me when I first started, man. I had to unfollow everyone from my first company because I was so embarrassed, man. I ended up following them back later on, but I just didn't want anyone to see that I was sharing stuff. But anyway, yeah, I was doing that, and for some reason, people started following me. Yeah, people started following me, man. Damn. And then, yeah, one day someone reached out. I didn't know they were following me. Turns out they've been following me for months, and they offered me a contract to write for them. A lot of my contracts, something people don't know, a lot of my contracts are technical writing. I haven't actually worked on a machine learning project with a client before. Any project I've worked on has been on my own. But what I do get from these clients is experience of the landscape, because I would often be asked to write about things that I've never ever done, and then I'll just include it into my project. So like they'll be like, oh, can you write an ML Ops ebook for us? And while I'm doing the research to write the ebook, I'm also figuring out, oh my gosh, I didn't do that for my project. Experiment tracking. I'm going to add that into my project. Start tracking experiments. So it's been my way of like getting paid to learn, which has been the best thing ever. So, but there is opportunities to freelance, like on projects, like building like products and things like that. I haven't done it before. So I can't give you like any sort of insight into that domain, but I've mainly been writing for clients.
Well, to me, that's something I think is really incredible as well, though, right? Is that there are so many of these roles that are like, I would say like machine learning adjacent, right? Where you're not necessarily doing the machine learning, but you're writing about it, you're exploring the domain that to be perfectly honest, I don't think you have to have as like great a machine learning skill set for to be able to still do that type of work. And it's an incredible thing, right? Is that like you've been able to make this like incredible space and niche for yourself by combining two really cool skills, right? Like the machine learning and your ability to write, which something that you've been really working on, that you've practiced and you've been really consistent with. And it doesn't take being the best machine learning engineer. It doesn't take necessarily being the best writer. But if you merge those two, you're in a space that a lot of people aren't. And there's a lot of demand for that skill set as well. I mean, to me, there's a lot of other like smaller pockets within machine learning that have a lot of opportunity that people just aren't capitalizing on because they don't think of doing something that's not just purely machine learning, right? And that's just not the case. I mean, like if you think about it, for example, a graphic design for me, someone that has a little bit of knowledge of machine learning and a good amount of knowledge of graphic design, from like a content perspective, they could be making incredibly cool visuals that are really shareable. They're viral. My friend, the data professor, hand draws some of these beautiful diagrams of what machine learning, data science, AI are. And they're awesome infographics, right? And he's like the only one that's doing that. And I love those. Those are so shareable. I always like them whenever I see someone else sharing them. But there's like so much room even in that space where it's like, hey, how do you simplify this? How do you make this field more digestible? It's just the basics. But if you're showing it in a different way or explaining it in a different way, like there's value created in that without a doubt in my mind.
Absolutely. Most people I've spoken to would tell me that they haven't come from a traditional path into machine learning or data science. So I'm just like, dude, use that to your advantage, because that's what makes you unique. It's what makes you different from everybody else. I mean, I talk openly about I was in a cult and I was doing X, Y, and Z before I got involved with like machine learning. But I hope somewhere down the line, people can see this is why it's converged into writing, because for me, writing is getting everything in here out. And machine learning is now something that I really am interested in being able to get everything out and then also talk about things that I'm genuinely interested in is almost like a release for me. Like, it's not even because I want to get paid or anything. Like, I just feel like I'm doing something I genuinely want to do. And everybody has got those things that like experiences that's happened to them or things that they're truly passionate about on the side that they can merge it like together with. Like, I know someone who was like super, super, super on it, like in terms of fitness, and they also like love artificial intelligence, but they just didn't know how to code. But because they love fitness so much and artificial intelligence so much, they've done enough just to be able to merge it and build some sort of product that would help them optimize their training. And I was like, dude, like, that's different. Let's just say they wanted a job. Like, what hiring manager will not hear that and just be like, I want her. Do you know what I mean?
Well, so the idea that okay, let's say 100 people apply to the same job, right? If they all have roughly the same quantitative skill set, right? There's probably going to be, of those 100 people, 25 people are qualified from a quantitative perspective. If they all have roughly the same quantitative perspective qualifications, how do you differentiate them?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, you start looking at other things. You start looking at their histories and these other things, and like by definition, that's important. You know, if you're,
I mean, that's a positive way to look at it. I genuinely look at it as like, I am not gonna be better than someone in that. Like, okay, let's just say if I take the approach of someone who's proper geeky with maths and something like that, I'm not gonna be the best mathematician. So let's not go down that avenue, because if it really did get to talking the math, someone's gonna blow their mind away more than I ever could. And I'm not gonna be that guy who's gonna come in and start talking about efficiency of algorithms, because it's never been me. I've not been the guy who was coding since 12 and now cares so much about the efficiency of algorithms. So I'm not going to try and channel myself down that route. But I know my strengths is in, leading and writing and influencing and all of those things. How can I best put those traits about me forward alongside my passion for machine learning? And writing was just the easiest way. So I think it's extremely, extremely important that to the point where I even say, like, yeah, you need the quantitative skills, but don't focus on that so much. Like, also focus on trying to put forward who you are. That's already a unique thing, because nobody's like you. No one's been through what you've been through. No one's had the experiences you've been through. If you can successfully express yourself, like you, there's not going to be any issue. Like, the right employer will take you on.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that a lot of the times people trying to break in, they try to make themselves seem so much like the other candidates. I think that that's actually hurting you more than it's helping you, which is kind of a crazy thing.
It's probably our fault though. Like, I say our fault. I mean, like, the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
The people that have put themselves as gatekeepers, because it's almost like, I've got to live up. Okay, let's not even say, it's all the noise on social media. So many people saying so many different things. I know you probably don't want to just pick one person to listen to, but I personally pick one person in specific areas. Like, I know if I want to build a project, I'm going onto the Ken G channel and I'm watching you build a project live. And this isn't me trying to kiss your bum or anything. Like, it's facts. You're going to show me how to build a project live and I'm going to follow along with it. But maybe if I want to deploy something, I'll listen to I forgot his name. God. He's also a writer, but if I'm gonna deploy it, I'll go onto his channel. I forgot his name. I don't know why I done that. It just literally just left my head. And then at the same time, if I want to learn the maths behind something, I'm gonna go and listen to Andrew Ng. If he hasn't done it, I'll go to Cassie oh my God, I slaughtered her name. Cassie from Google. Cassie, I'm sorry, Cassie, if you ever do watch this channel. Yeah, like, I have loads of different people saying stuff, but it's specific things that I'm gonna listen to them for. Whereas I find many, especially with beginners, they're very open to information from just literally anybody. And I think that's where it comes from. That's where that let's try and be generic mindset comes from. Like, we have to do X, Y, and Z. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to call anyone out and I'm not trying to shade anyone. I promise. Like, I remember one time, like, I spoke to someone and he was just like telling me, yeah, he needs to learn how to, load a data set without using read CSV from pandas. And I was just like, why? And he's like, oh, well, this very prominent guy said this on Twitter. And I was just like, dude, you're focusing on the wrong problems. Like, the problem is, can you solve the problem? Not can you just read the data set? Like, let's get to that. Like, let's get to the main things first. But this is what I'm trying to get at. Like, is we've got, with all due respect to that guy, I hope he doesn't mean it. He probably didn't mean it in like he probably didn't mean it for it to have the impact it had on the community. But when we say certain things and we probably aren't conscious of it, I've probably done the same thing myself. And we become gatekeepers to people who start to form like one way of thinking, especially when we have a lot of followers, then we all just end up becoming very generic, similar types of programmers or machine learning engineers or data scientists. And it's not cool, man.
No, I know what you're saying. It's like this weird paradoxical thing, right? Where, you know, I highly encourage more people to get into the space, telling stories and being vocal about their experiences, because there's a beauty in diversity of thought, right? Like, my experience is going to be only what I've been exposed to, right? Someone else who's had a different experience, they're probably going to have a different story, and their experience of what worked for them is going to be different, right? And I think it's really valuable to have the spread of the different experiences that people have had. At the same time, that makes it confusing for people in the early stages, because they're like, oh, these different things work for these different people. What should I do? And to me, one of the things I really focus on is not necessarily like, hey, this is what you should do, but this is how you should think about this domain, right? Like, this is how, you know, when you're learning a new field, let's take a lot of information in and like structure it for yourself and realize that, hey, like, what is going to work for me based on the research that I've done. And you could do that in a couple different ways. You know, for example, for learning resources, like, I think you should generally have one or two resources that are your bread and butter. Like, you like the instructor, you like how it's conveyed, but you also look at one or two others, because sometimes, let's say it's like something relatively simple, like K-nearest neighbors, right? From one resource, I might not understand how it's explained, but from another resource, right off the bat, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. You know, I should have added that. Yeah.
And the thing with the gatekeeping and all of that is, I don't think any of it is intended to be gatekeeping, right? It's all honestly like, hey, like, this is what worked for me. Like, I think you're going to have to do XYZ to get in. And I don't think any of those people's opinion is necessarily wrong from their experiences. But what we also have to remember is quote unquote gatekeepers, right? Is that
people of influence.
Yeah, people of influence, is that everyone's situation is inevitably going to be unique, right? Like, if I'm applying to FANG data science jobs versus data science jobs that are like in the Midwest at non-tech companies, my advice is going to be completely different, right? And honestly, I think the most informative thing that we can do as people who have large audiences is say, like, look, the first thing you should do as someone breaking into this field is look internally. Like, what do you want to get out of this? Like, what are your goals? What are your experiences? Like, what are you hoping to achieve? Because that's what will inevitably drive your process to get to those things, right? If, again, like, your goal is to become a data scientist at one of these FANG companies, then like the resources you should use, the people you should listen to are probably going to be dramatically different than if your goal is to just break into like a data analyst internship in college, because the expectations around those two career paths is wildly different. I mean, there's some things that'll have crossover, right? Like the idea that you should be doing projects. In my mind, like, that's a no-brainer for almost everyone in this domain, right? But the like the advice that you get varies so much by your unique situation, and it frustrates me a lot that I see people in my DMs a lot. They're just trying to generalize, like, how should I learn this? And it's like, well, that depends on like what you're trying to get, right? And there's that whole other part of the equation that is overlooked. So to me, that is something that we could always do better on. So those are really all the questions I had. I want to end this by asking if you had any book recommendations. You talked about so much about how reading and those types of things have made this incredible positive impact on your life. Were there some that hit you particularly hard? I'll also link that article that you described below in the description about how to become a serial reader.
Right. I've got a new favorite author. His name is James Is it Tucker? Altucher?
Altucher. Yeah.
Altucher. Right. James Altucher. I'll say just read every single one of his books. So it's Choose Yourself, Reinvent Yourself, or Skip the Line.
Yeah, I read Skip the Line recently.
Yeah, I think those three. But James Altucher, yeah. Every book he's written, the guy, not only is he like proper insightful, the guy writes so well. Like he writes like a real conversation, and you genuinely feel like you're talking to someone. I don't know if you felt like that when you read Skip the Line.
No, I really liked that one. My friend Harpreet Sahota has had him on his podcast too.
Yeah, so funny thing, I literally blew my cover. I messaged Harpreet, I was like, dude, like, you seriously need to get this guy on your podcast. Then he sent me a link to the podcast, and I was like, awkward. And then he's like, you don't watch my channel, do you? And I was like, no, I genuinely do, but I just don't know why I couldn't find his. But yeah, no. Serious guy. Serious.
Yeah, I want to read a couple more of his books. I mean, I really enjoyed the Skip the Line one. To that point, what are some of the ways that people can learn more about you? Where can they find you, connect with you, those types of things?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Medium. Medium has this new cool tool where you can like subscribe to newsletters. So whenever I write, you can get a notification. Those are my two main, like ways to contact me. I'm also on Twitter, but yeah, Twitter. But yeah, Kurtis Pykes on every single channel. If you just type my name on Google, you'll probably come up with me. I've tried my best to make it rank. So
awesome. Well, I'll link all of those things in the description, and I'll pin it in the comment of the video. So that was it. That was an incredible interview, man. What a wild story. I'm so happy to call you a friend and to be able to have conversations like these.
Honestly, it's an honor. Thank you so much. And boy, I'm looking forward to speaking again.
Heck yeah, I am too, man. Don't be a stranger.